Are the top names under guaranteed contracts, or do they have to produce to be paid?
You know what? We do a lot of different kind of contracts. We're not really guaranteed contract kind of company.
All right.
Not real healthy.
Aaron H. asks the age-old promoter's question. Do you think it's fair that your employees are not offered any kind of health insurance policy? Your company asks wrestlers to repeatedly risk their health and well-being for your product and your fans' enjoyment. However, these athletes are not offered even the health coverage that would be given to the janitors who clean up the studio after the show. Aaron's got a follow-up question which kind of answers her own question, which says, please explain why you consider TNA Pro wrestlers to be independent contractors, not employees. As independent contractors, are your wrestlers free to wrestle at WWE events if the schedules do not conflict?
They can wrestle anywhere but WWE. I mean, they can go and wrestle in, AAA, or, some of ours wrestle in Ring of Honor. The only thing we can't do, and it's by contract, is they can't participate in a DVD that will be shown at mass retail. They can go and they can participate in an independent show that's, will show DVD as long as it's just selling on that. And that's my obligation to my DVD company, not our rule. But they are independent contractors, and we do have some form of a injury policy that we were able to get them, and it's something I would love to see change, but we'd have to change the whole ability for them to be employees, and everything would have to come through the company versus them have the ability and freedom to go out and do the things that they do now.
So if there was a formula that was proposed that worked, it's something you'd consider?
Yeah, absolutely I would. But then again, it would be us having to take control as employees versus them, like I said, going out and starting their own food line or doing this television show and that, and their lives would have to change as well. So it would be something we'd have to work out.
Sinbad from the board at F4W Online. Dixie, why did you air the speech of you talking down the locker room?
Talking down the locker room, like I was. Well, I talk to the locker room all the time, and I think it was one of those. I'm not real crazy about being on camera, period. I mean, I love talking in front of you guys, and I could sit here all day and I just have to pretend like that camera's not there. But I'm not a real fan of that. And I didn't want to be on that, but they felt like it was important. It was a time when we were trying to tell people that, change is good. And I've always told this to my employees. I tell this, I have a 3- and a 5-year-old. And, I'm already starting to find ways to tell them. I mean, you don't just ever want to get comfortable in life, I mean, change is scary for people, but that's where real great reward comes. And it was a very motivating speech. And, all the guys afterwards, were all high-fiving and were hugging, and they were all, they felt one way about it. And then a group full of other people watched it and didn't get that same feel.
How do you convey that to a 3-year-old? I have a 4-year-old that doesn't listen to me. How do you get that to the 3-year-old in particular?
Yeah, we talk about a lot of stuff, like money and all kinds of stuff that we're trying to teach them early.
All right, I got to talk to her more about money, I guess. Samuel from the board at F4W Online. What are your feelings on Booker T and his departure from TNA?
I love Booker T, and I can't even say the word Booker T without saying Charmel in the same sentence. They are, hand in glove. And two wonderful people. You know what? When he is on and he is motivated to work, there's not very many that are as good as he is. But if he feels like he wants to get in that space again, then maybe we'll see him back.
All right, MKD, dear Dixie Carter, who is behind bringing in the Nasty Boys to TNA. Could you please fire him or her? Please, pretty please. I'll buy you a cake if you do. Well, how long did they last, really? I mean,
well, they were never hired. I mean, they were just brought in to do, a couple of weeks, and they were just brought in on daily deals. And, if I go back to the minute by minutes, I could have made the decision to keep them because they were usually in one of the highest rated segments, to be honest. But, they were never brought in as long-term guys, but, very good to be around and definitely team players.
Jay Zaretsky, Ontario, Canada. Who was it that told you that bringing in Jenna from Survivor and having her compete in wrestling matches was a good idea? Did anyone rightfully lose their job over it?
Jenna wasn't brought in to wrestle. Jenna was brought in, she was doing a lot of publicity, and as a company who struggles with awareness, she did a tremendous amount of interviews for us. She wrestled one time with Charmel, and it was more of a publicity stunt because she had something going on with Survivor, and it gave her an angle to talk about that got us a lot of exposure, and that was the only reason that did it. It was a very quick in and out, but that was the reason behind it.
Video from the Raw deal.
Yo, Holmes, wake up. You got a question for Dixie Carter.
What? You wake me up for this? Oh, I must have fallen asleep. It was the TNA pay-per-view. Hey, what's up, Dixie? Now, I understand you recently met with Jim Ross. Now, he intelligently declined your offer. Now, let me ask you this. Was that a ploy to throw Mike Tenay under the bus, or did Jim Ross tweet do that for you?
Is there anything you can talk about with your meeting with Jim Ross?
I mean, that's all hearsay, and if I did meet with Jim, I wouldn't tell a man on the couch who's bad-mouthing me.
What do you think of Mike Tenay? Here's an opportunity.
You know what?
Assess
It's
his
interesting
work.
because I think when we were new and you know, fresh out there and everything, you know, Mike Tenay was, you know, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. He was one of the top one or two, you know, guys maybe right behind Jim Ross, voted by the fans, and you know, he has incredible knowledge and again a guy that works very, very hard for us. And I would never throw him under the bus.
Okay, works for me. Jason from Melbourne, wake up. Thoughts on the Honky Tonk Man and his comments about TNA and employees such as Hogan, Russo, Bischoff, and Bubba the Love Sponge, and the overall status of TNA?
Hadn't heard it, not interested.
Okay. Greg Pike, ever have talks with the Ultimate Warrior?
You know, I think he got his start with Jerry Jarrett back in the 80s, and I know Jerry had some conversations with him when they were first starting, but I don't think anything ever came of it, and I have not talked to him since.
You know, he changed his name to Warrior legally.
I know. Like Prince, you know, they just...
Hot shit. Greg Pike, ever had talks with Goldberg?
I have, actually. I had breakfast with him one time at the Four Seasons north of San Diego, and it was I can't tell the whole story in here, but it was a very interesting breakfast. Good guy, very nice guy.
Okay. Brujo 2018, what are your future plans for the X division? Is it going just high flying like some wrestlers, or is it going to be a mix of high flying with great wrestling, or lucha like WCW cruiserweight division wrestlers, Guerrero, Mysterio, Benoit, Malenko, etc.?
Well, I think high flying with great wrestling is what most of those guys do. But you know, we've been talking a little bit about the time that we have on the show, and if we're trying to slow the pace and make things make more sense and build the pay-per-views and do all of the things that you all are saying, you know, we're going to have one X Division segment on the show, and the goal is to have one great X Division and not just a match that's thrown out there, but something that's going to have some substance and meat to it to really start to build these characters. And so I'm excited about it. I really believe in the X Division. I think everybody does. It's just one of those things when you have so much on such a little time to do it. It's difficult, but you know, we're going to make a big push for that.
All right. Anthony Militek, hi Dixie. First of all, let me say you're a very attractive woman, and I wish I had someone like you as a boss. I bet you get that said to you a lot. You are more beautiful than any of the beautiful people. Speaking of those lovely knockouts, whose idea was the beautiful people? They're one of the few reasons I watch TNA. Anthony's breathing heavy at home.
He needs to get his eyes checked.
Yes.
No, you know, that was pretty easy. You guys just saw Angelina Levin here a few minutes ago, and you know, with her and Velvet and some of this kind of BFF and, you know, the beautiful kind of comments they started saying, it just happened very organically. Creative came up with it, and I think it's been, you know, it's perfect for them.
Van Boxmeer from the board at F4W Online. Why is the focus of the knockout shifting from being the anti-diva, legitimate athletes and wrestlers, to becoming beautiful people, show tits and ass, sex-selling objects that you previously were vehemently opposed to? You were opposed to.
Yeah. I think if they were showing tits and ass and sex-selling objects, I would still be vehemently opposed to that. You know, our girls, I would put them against anybody in the business. I don't think anybody can hold a candle to how our girls wrestle, and you know, I'm very, very proud of that division.
Jason from Melbourne, was the Bubba the Love Sponge Awesome Kong situation handled poorly? Was it fair to keep him off TV whilst this was happening? She's probably one of the best workers on the roster.
She's been on TV since then. You know, that wasn't the reason, but it was very difficult with her being Kong's tag team partner and holding the championship belt at the time. You know, I don't think it was handled poorly. I think it was actually handled very well. There's a lot of stuff I can't discuss in here, but if you had all the facts, I think everybody in here would agree that it was done exactly by the book, and anybody who has, you know, an obligation to a company and would have done the same thing.
Potpourri. Alex Robinson from the board at F4W Online. What are your thoughts on the wrestling newsletters?
Wrestling websites, newsletters, blogs. I think anything that anybody who's passionate about wrestling is good in my book. You know, whether they like TNA, hate TNA, it doesn't matter. They like wrestling, and I think it's important. And you know, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to get out there and, you know, really continue to spread the word of wrestling and make people, you know, more aware of how great it is.
Do they have influence, the dirt sheets?
No.
Okay. Samuel from the board at F4W Online. What are your feelings on Brian Alvarez? Who?
I don't know him.
There you go. Well, okay, then here's a follow-up. Aaron H., please respond to this quote from wrestling reporter Brian Alvarez from March 11th. TNA has been the biggest failure of this generation. The story of TNA is a story of a group of people who never learn a thing. They never learn a thing from their failures, and more astoundingly, they never learn a thing from their few successes. They run by a woman who has no idea what she's doing, and the TV has been written for years by a guy who has no idea what he's doing. It's the classic story of doing the same thing over and over again and hoping somehow things will change. That's Brian Alvarez.
I don't know him. You know, I think to be a company that's making the kind of money that we're making and doing it with integrity and professionalism and being kind to our wrestlers and loving our fans and having success, I don't call that a failure.
All right. Noel Medina, the Wrestling Observer newsletter website ran a poll about what TNA's biggest problem is. Can you comment on the results of the poll? You have the JPEG up.
You have it right
I hear the crank on the computer. This is what the JPEG will say, and all you in the audience can see it. The top of the list, 30% said bad storylines, lack of consistency. Oh, we each have one. Oh. Nice. Bad storylines, lack of consistency, 30%. 20% said feels too much like WCW and thus comes off like a failure. 12% said bad management. 10% said too much reliance on older wrestlers. No vision was 8%. No ability to connect with fan base was 5%. Inability to make stars 3%. Not enough wrestling on the TV show 2%. Too many angles 2%. Bad pacing. Now, you don't have to respond to all of it, but is there any of it that you would agree with or something that maybe you identified also and got under the hood and had to fix in the last couple of years?
Well, I think we've talked a little bit today about more focus on the show and slowing down the pacing and not doing as many angles and things such as that. You know, no ability to connect with the fan base. I think we have the most passionate fan base in all of wrestling, and that's something I'm proud of. If you come to the shows, you know, you're encouraged not to sit down and to participate in the show and to stand up, and you know, it's a party and we embrace them, and so I think we very much connect to the fans. And I think, you know, there's been at times when we've been lack of consistency, you know, but I think today, you know, I'm proud of where we're at. And I think, again, that some of the stuff I can go in here about the older wrestlers and things such as that, again, the minute by minutes tell me that those people still deliver the highest ratings on the show. And so, you know, we're using them to help establish the younger guys who, when they're in segments by themselves, don't do that. And that's probably the best way of doing it.
Okay. Mike Campbell has a very important question, something you have to straighten out in the world of wrestling. There's a fellow here in Syracuse, New York, who claims to be a wrestler named Killer Koala, and also claims to work for TNA. He always goes to the house shows, indie shows, and pay-per-views at Hooters in a TNA shirt, telling anyone that will listen he works for TNA, and name drops you in particular. Is this guy a legit TNA employee?
Not the last time I checked our payroll.
Okay.
Anybody else know him? No? Okay.
Richard Berger from the Wrestling Classics. Would you be willing to sit and watch a couple of Dragon's Gate USA discs with an open mind?
You know, I don't know what he's asking in particular, but I think not only do we watch a lot of tapes, not only from them, but others around the world, we actually send people to shows. I go to competitive shows, and I think it's a way of paying your respects to other people in our industry, as well as just, you know, seeing what they're doing and seeing their talent.